Good morning. Welcome to the December 19th, 2024 Electoral Area Services Committee meeting. It is the last one of the year. I would like to call this meeting to order at 9:30 a.m. and acknowledge that the Sunshine Coast Regional District is located on the territories of the Shishal and Squamish Nations. Good morning, everyone. We have some staff here. We have our 5 electoral area directors and Director Toth sitting over there observing. We have an agenda before us. Any changes to the agenda, directors? I don't see any hands, so I'll look for a motion to adopt the agenda as presented. Moved by Director McMahon, seconded by Director Bax. Thank you very much. All in favor? And that passes. Excellent. We have an exciting meeting today. We have 2 presentations. First, we have Daniel Rogers, who is president of the Keats Island Conservation Society, and Bob Rabnett, president of the Eastbourne Community Association. They will be here online to talk to us about West Beach Park on Keats Island. And, good morning, Mr. Rogers.
Good morning, Chair.
Good morning. We're ready for you whenever.
I don't see Bob up here yet.
Oh,
I see him.
Bob.
I see his name, but he hasn't turned his camera on yet.
Okay. It's early still.
Not for you. Not for you, folks. You start your meetings like this. Bob and I are happily retired.
Island life. Excellent.
Yeah. Well, neither of us are there at the moment.
Oh, that's too bad. Good morning, Mr. Rabnett.
Good morning.
Excellent.
Sorry, a little technical difficulty.
No problem. We have those all the time. We are ready for you. So whenever you're ready to go, we are listening.
Good morning, and thank you. I assume you can see my screen, and I've done this right?
Yes, we can see it.
Thank you, Chair.
You might want to go full screen or presentation mode. Yeah, or start the slideshow.
No idea how to do that.
Is it the little icon down there by the volume or by the size? Oh, F5 apparently will do it. There you go. That's perfect.
Okay, thanks. And thanks and greetings. I want to start by introducing myself. You've already introduced who I am, and greetings to all of the directors, some of whom I know and some of you I don't know from my life as an Islands trustee. Start by just recognizing that Keats Island is known as Lek Tynes most commonly in the Squamish language, and of course has been the home for Coast Salish peoples for millennium. I wanted to bring we wanted to bring this issue to your attention. I must say it was a bit confusing to know which committee to bring it to, but I know this committee oversees parks, etc. So we thought we'd start with you. Our intention is to introduce you to the situation regarding parks on Keats and emphasize specifically an issue related to a deleterious and potentially dangerous situation regarding West Beach Parks in Eastbourne. For you, those of you who have not been on Keats, it's on the southwest side of Keats in Eastbourne itself, and then make a request to you at the end. So a little bit of background for your information. The Eastbourne Community Association, and Bob is the current president of the Eastbourne Association. I am a past president, a number of probably a decade ago. Is the voice of and the registered society for the community of Eastbourne, which is a community of approximately 210 residences or lots on the east side of Keats Island. They have experience being the contact with the SCRD regarding a number of issues, including water and other issues, and have also been the recipient of some grants and aids over the years, being the original sponsors of our fire protection group. the Keats Island Conservation Society, which I am the current president of, promotes conservation environmental issues on the island through education and advocacy. So just so you know, if you haven't been there, Keats Island, there are 5 existing parks, SCRD parks on Keats Island, 1 pending on the other side in Keats Landing. The 5 parks are shown in this map that's attached here, which is actually a production of the SCRD. There are 3 smallish beach parks, and then a relatively larger park called Silver Creek Park, which is more in the center of the island, and then 1 tiny little park down by Wreck Beach. That is the extent of our parks on the island, and the reality is that none of the parks have any amenities that the SCRD has placed in the parks. The beach parks each have access points and stairs, in some cases all installed by local community members. To be clear, we're not requesting amenities at this point, but in the sense of facilities or structure, we just want to bring to your attention, as has been done with staff for some time, that there is an issue related to West Beach Park, which I'll talk about a bit in a minute. Just so you're aware, in our view, Keats is quite park deficient. Besides those few SCRD parks, there is a smallish provincial park on the island called Plumper Cove, which faces Gibsons. And the rest of the island is private property. There is no Crown Land on Keats per se, so we are we're fairly park deficient. So just so you're aware, islanders pay into the parks function, and going by the last taxation summary for Area F islands as a whole, the Area F islands paid $172,000 into the parks function. I don't have access to a breakdown as to what Keats, but going by the number of properties that are on Keats, taking a rough estimate of approximately 25% of the properties in the Area F islands, with Gambier and Keats and a few on the Paisley Islands, I took a rough estimate of approximately 25%. Which means, which would be an amount of about $43,941, and I rounded that down to $40,000. And of course, that's an annual contribution that we've been paying into the park function on Keats for the SCRD, for which we frankly, to be frank, we get very little in the way of any kind of services related to the parks. Over the past 10 to 12 years, and I've been around for 25, and I've had regular contact with the parks function. We've had only a few activities by the SCRD on the island. We've had a couple of visits from parks staff. We've had a few tree fallers that have come in from time to time to top, or I'd say once every 2 years. A few years ago, they put a couple of cement blocks to stop people from driving into the Silver Creek Park, and we've got some signs. That's the extent of the work that has been done, to our knowledge, on the island. So I would say it's a fairly large understatement to assert that we're not getting, despite paying substantial amounts into the parks function, the return in terms of services for the parks. And I want to just remind you, we're not asking for amenities. We're simply asking that the West Beach Park and other issues be dealt with as they arise. We're just asking for your parks to be protected. Let me talk a little bit about
Mr.
West
Rogers,
Beach.
can I just interrupt just 1 second? I don't want to stop you. I just want to let you know that you're at 6 minutes, so you have 4 minutes left in your
okay.
10-minute delegation. Thank you.
Okay, I'll keep going. So let's talk a bit about West Beach Park. So West Beach Park is by far the most popular beach park on Keats. It's threatened and damaged in 2 ways. This is a park that can attract between 100 to 150 people on a summer's weekend, and is also the place where we have our annual polar bear swim, which can attract 150 people. It's a very, very popular park and the most popular place on the island. We've got damage from uphill runoff and from storm effects. I'm going to now just going to turn it over to Bob, who's going to talk a little bit about a recent storm event and the type of damage that we're seeing. I'm hoping I can get this video to work. Go ahead, Bob.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks very much for the opportunity to speak here. The October 9th storm event that you can see the video of here is upland runoff going down the westernmost path to West Beach, and it does a tremendous amount of damage. What you're seeing here is the result of water flows that occur naturally, of course, but have exceed the capacity of the small ditch and small drainage system we have to move that water from the upland down to the beach. This is a system that was put in by a local resident at his own cost, actually. It's just in the past, I think it's worked a little better now. The intensity and the frequency of the storms has been increasing, and it's simply inadequate for the water flow. One of the results, aside from the significant erosion that happens in these events, the damage to the trails creates safety hazards for people trying to access the beach, and it can be and often is serious enough that it prevents some of the more elderly residents from safely accessing the beach and the park area. So our ultimate objective here is to control the water before it reaches this stage, and we need to. There's perhaps numerous ways to solve the problem, but probably the most expedient is to just increase the size of the system we have now, which requires some likely some equipment and some funds to increase the size of the ditch and culvert across the access path. The uphill drainage. Sorry, go ahead, Dan.
Okay, I was just going to say the picture you're seeing now is showing the results of the uphill drainage, and it's undercutting the bank as the water comes down. I have on a number of occasions brought this to the attention of the staff. I noted that there was a project that was in sort of preliminary budget, but not recommended for approval, which is sort of what spurred us to come and talk to you. I have no idea how that was costed because there's been no communication about any project for this thing, despite our many requests to do this. Just so you know, we also have foreshore erosion. There's substantial foreshore erosion. Some occurred earlier last week with the most recent storm with high tides, et cetera, because we face the south from the southeast. We get the storms, so the park is actually in danger of being eroded to the effect from both uphill and downhill. And what we're looking for is as we said, we've been paying approximately $40,000 a year into the CSCRD parks function for years. We want to ensure the directors are aware of the ongoing degradation of your park and the associated risk to safety and the environment. There's been at least 2 instances where trees have come down, one where a resident was hurt a number of years ago. We'd like the SCRD to invest in the project, either by having staff initiate a project to control the drainage and erosion. So, for example, the SCRD is going to be doing some water line burying connected to the Eastbourne water system in that very region, and I've suggested that at that time they could do some mitigation of the water runoff, or provide funding directly to the ECA or somewhere to undertake the mitigation work, although I know that's not the way your project, your funding usually works. But we wanted to make sure the directors were aware of this because, as I said, we brought it to the attention of staff, but directors need to know what the issue is in Eastbourne, and hopefully make this a priority for the parks function on Keats Island. Bob, do you want to add anything else?
No, I don't want to press the time here. Just we appreciate the opportunity to speak to you, and we need we frankly need the assistance of the directors to move any kind of meaningful mitigation strategies forward for this area. So.
And just so you know, I think I provided to your staff a handout, a written handout, which sort of follows along as well in a Word format that provides a little bit more detail of some of the stuff that we're
Yes, thank you so much. Sorry, we're a little over time here, so we're gonna wrap it up. And thank you very much for the write-up. That's very useful. We're able to follow along, and we can keep it for information for later. And I want to thank you so much for taking the time to surface this. Pardon? Yes, sorry. Thank you so much for taking the time to surface this issue with us and let us know. These remote parks we don't see very often, so it's good to see some pictures and videos. Thank you so much for that. And I have Director Stamford, who would like to say a few words. Oh, yes, and if you could stop sharing the screen, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, I gotta figure out how to do that.
So just really quickly, thank you, Dan and Bob, for bringing this up. It is something that I have brought up before, and any opportunity the islands can have to remind the rest of the regional district about some of the specific challenges we have is always a good opportunity. But I do want to mention that I have asked that this particular project be moved to round 2 of our budget for this year. It is complicated. It is multi-jurisdictional, and I'm definitely hoping we can work with staff to see if there's a way we can move this forward. But there are some big challenges to this. This is a prime example of where climate change is really hitting our infrastructure. So it's going to be this is an example of what is happening up and down the coast with our assets. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Director Stamford. Director McMahon.
Yeah, I also wanted climate change. Yes, Ocean Beach Esplanade was underwater yesterday morning. So, and that affects Chester Park too. So we have a lot of these places that are complicated jurisdictionally and are getting it from both directions. But we need to find some ways to move forward. And I would be interested in looking at opportunities through the CLIP program, which stands for Community-Led Something Project.
Yeah, we filed one of those about 3.5, 4 years ago and never heard any back. So
Right. I think we need to look into those a bit more to see how we can use that structure, because there's a lot of projects that are languishing, just lack of capacity, and there's community volunteers who want to help. So I hope we can find a way forward. Thank you.
And
Thank you.
and thank you. I know we're over time, Chair. Just let me say, if you ever need any more information or want to reach out, please feel free to reach out to myself or to Bob. We can connect you with whatever you need or provide any information you need. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much. And again, this is going to round 2, and we also have a parks review going to round 2, so that could help us as well. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Have a lovely holiday season.
You too. All the best.
Same to you. All right, so moving on to our second presentation, we have Reed Bailey, who is the team lead for Land Use Planning, BC Ministry of Agriculture and Food, and this is regarding BC Land Use Planning for Agriculture. Good morning, Mr. Bailey.
Good morning. I followed Director McMahon's lead and wore my Santa hat, so I hope that's okay.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for that. Nice touch.
Thank you.
All right, so you have 10 minutes.
Okay, I'm
Take
just
it away.
going to share my screen here. Just maybe give me a thumbs up and you can see it. How's that looking?
That's great.
And just going to put it in presenter mode. Fantastic. Okay, yes, thank you. My name is Reed Bailey. I am the team lead for the land use planning team with the Ministry of Agriculture and Food. And today I'd like to present on land use planning for agriculture in BC. So just a quick agenda. I'm going to talk about why agriculture is important to our province, 6 big pressures on BC's farmland, some tools in the toolbox for local government officials when looking at agriculture, some key messages and actions, and then wrap it up with some discussion and questions. So first off, why should the province and local governments support the agricultural sector? Well, it is a significant contributor to BC's economy, and the sector is growing. BC farm cash receipts increased from just over $4 billion in 2020 to over $4.5 billion in 2022. And often the comparison to other sectors is quite surprising. You can see that agriculture actually outpaced the oil and gas sector in 2020 there. Employment figures tell a similar story as well. In 2023, there were 40,000 people employed in primary agriculture in the province versus only 19,000 in forestry and logging, which has traditionally been viewed as the backbone of the province's economy. And it kind of goes without saying, but food security is really, it's more important than ever. The UN reports that the global food crisis is only getting worse due to things like our changing climate and global conflicts. And we really should be doing everything we can to grow our own food. So turning our minds now from economic activity to pressures on farmland, it should come as no surprise that agricultural land BC is very limited and it's under a great deal of pressure. 6 key pressures facing the agricultural land reserve and the farming industry include the limited ALR land base itself, cost of ALR land, urbanization, housing, demographics, and a lack of industrial land. And it's really interesting. These pressures are really nothing new. Almost all these pressures have existed in some form or another for the past 50 years, which is approximately why 50 years ago, the ALR and the ALC were created. It was in direct response to some of these pressures. The difference now, however, is many of these pressures are much more intense than they were back in the 1970s. So I'll talk about each one of these in turn here. So first off, our limited ALR land base. You can see there's a map of BC on the right, and the green is indicating the ALR. And you might have heard this stat out there that 5% of BC's land base is in the ALR. That's technically true, but it's actually quite a misleading stat. First off, 7% of the ALR is simply not available for farming. If you think of large blocks of ALR land, things that are also contained in those large blocks or polygons are things like roads, bodies of water, federal land, so land that you cannot be farmed. It's unavailable for farming. And what's more concerning actually is over half, 54% of the ALR is crown land. And what do we have on crown land? Well, we have a whole host of competing interests like mining, forestry, First Nations, recreation. It's almost impossible to buy crown land as fee simple and start a farm. And it's interesting too that there is some ALR farmland, some non-ALR farmland out there, but it does not have the same regulatory protections as that in the ALR. Quite simply, farming outside of the ALR is a little riskier than within the ALR. The next pressure too is the cost of farmland, which unfortunately just continues to rise. Average cultivated farmland in BC increased by 8% in 2022, and this was preceded by 18% in 2021. And the land values on a per acre basis in BC are the highest in Canada. The South Coast is an astonishing $139,000 per acre. And compare this to Ontario, which ranges from a low to $4,000 to $28,000. So by far and away the highest cost in Canada. Vancouver Island, which Sunshine Coast is often lumped into from a jurisdictional standpoint, is at $63,000. So very expensive as well. And it's really this increasing demand and limited supply that are contributing to these higher values. And farmland, particularly near urban areas, is seeing huge competition for rural residences, investment properties, and small hobby farms. The third pressure is urbanization. As most people are likely aware, BC is a great place to live. And as a whole, our population is growing and really showing no signs of slowing down. We have these 3 areas of significant high growth, which are the Lower Mainland, the Okanagan, and the Southern Vancouver Island. And really in and of itself, there's no problem with that. But from a farming perspective, this is also where 80% of BC's farm cash receipts are generated. So what we have is a lot of people living in a small area where the majority of farm income is actually generated. And associated with urbanization is housing demands. Everyone knows BC has high housing prices that just keep going higher and higher, and this is both to purchase a home and for rentals. BC as well, not surprisingly, is the most unaffordable province for housing, and this explains a bit an ongoing trend of a lot of British Columbians packing up and moving to Alberta, searching for cheaper housing. And it's worth noting too that this is not just a Lower Mainland problem anymore. For years and years, prices in the Lower Mainland were really blowing up, and the rest of the province was staying fairly level. Not anymore. About 5-10 years ago, this really changed. Everywhere else started to really rise, and we're really seeing this ripple effect of people moving out of Vancouver and pushing into secondary areas like SCRD. And because of this, more people are looking at the ALR to solve the housing crisis. And I'm here to tell you we shouldn't be doing that. And first off, it's really important to remember that it's called the Agricultural Land Reserve. Put another way, this is land that is reserved for agriculture. Land that might not be suitable or capable of agricultural production today, it might be tomorrow or next year or in 10 years. And with changes to technology and the economy and our climate, just because there's a vacant property today doesn't mean that it can't be a productive farm tomorrow. And something to always keep in mind too, the ALR is really not the solution to BC's housing crisis, nor is it the solution to local government planning on housing. I'm not trying to criticize local governments here, absolutely far from it. But what I'm trying to say is it's simply too easy and tempting for a lot of people to look at vacant, unused ALR land and say, hey, there it is. There's the solution to our housing crisis. I think as a province and a country, we haven't really adopted the build up and not out mantra. And it's certainly worth noting too that more people in the ALR really equals more headaches, particularly for farmers. You think of more people in the ALR means increased traffic or people driving farther distances, so more congested roads that farmers need to navigate. You see people unfamiliar with farming moving into farming areas. This is a huge, huge issue. What was one of the trends during COVID? Well, people were moving out of urban areas into more rural areas for more space, and these were the first people that are likely to complain about farming practices. Because they're simply not familiar with them. And it's also a big strain on infrastructure. Many rural areas are simply not equipped to handle large populations, and it's very expensive to service these areas as well. The fifth pressure here is demographics. People are likely aware the average age of a farmer in Canada keeps increasing, and the average age of a farmer in BC is actually higher than the national average. And depressingly, fewer young people are getting into farming. This is not good. It is a huge, huge problem. There's tons of reasons for this. Lack of affordable farmland is one. There's also just most young people don't want to get into the industry. It's a tough job. It's hard. I think of me and all my high school friends. None of us went into farming, and that's a trend we're seeing across the province. BC, on a bright note, does have the highest proportion of female farmers in Canada, which is a bit of an interesting one. And the sixth pressure here is a lack of industrial land. There is a critical shortage of industrial land in many parts of the province, which has resulted in some extraordinary prices for this land. It should come as no surprise that redeveloping this land is incredibly profitable for developers. Industrial lands do tend to offer opportunities, really good paying jobs outside of the service and knowledge economy, so that's a huge bonus. But this lack of industrial land is really putting pressure on the ALR to accommodate some of these uses. People are really eyeing up the ALR to house industrial uses. On now, this is a bit of I'm going to quickly whiz over this because I don't have much time left. Hopefully you get this presentation provided to you. Here's some tools that local governments can use regarding certain pieces of legislation. So first off, the Local Government Act, you can consider supporting agriculture with, forming an agricultural advisory committee or developing an agricultural area plan. The ministry has created what we call Minister's Bylaw Standards. These are kind of best practices that we encourage local governments to adopt when they are updating their zoning bylaws for things like setbacks and siting. There's also the Farm Practices Protection Act. It's important to recognize that farmers following normal farm practices are protected from certain local government nuisance and animal control bylaws. The ministry also has our agricultural land use inventories. So this is where our GIS team goes out and basically surveys the entire agricultural land in reserve within a regional district. It's a very powerful tool that we provide to local governments to use when they're updating their zoning bylaws and OCPs. The ALC Act, just acknowledging that the ALR is a provincial zone where farming is the priority use is important. We also always encourage local governments to have their bylaws in line with the agricultural land reserve use regulations. And the ALC has a whole host of bulletins and policies that, if you're unaware, they're really, really informative, and they really do a great job of explaining the regulation in kind of layman's terms. So a couple slides left just to finish up here. So first, some key messages. The competing demands for limited agricultural land are growing. Everyone wants to work in BC's limited valley bottoms. It's a problem. The challenges of farmers are growing too. The price of land is rising. Encroaching residential and industrial uses are really, challenging the economics of farming. Food security does require, suitable land base to actually support the sector. This kind of goes without saying, but, we're not making any more agricultural land and we never will. And protecting this provincial asset does require a provincial and a local government effort. Sometimes we hear that, farmland, that's just the province to deal with. But, recall there are many things that local governments can do to strengthen farming within their jurisdiction. Last slide here, some key actions, help BC farmers succeed by reducing burdens within your control, help create stronger buffers between farmland and other uses. Good fences really do make good neighbors. You can also coordinate with your local government neighbors to enact bylaws that are impacting agriculture that are consistent, fair, and easy for everyone to understand. This is very helpful. And recognizing that non-farm uses do have a long-standing and cumulative effect on the ALR itself. So that's it for me. Thank you so much. Happy to answer any questions here. I also have my colleague, it says Tom O'Dell, but it's actually, we have a different regional agrologist, Conley Keys. He's on the line as well. So if you have any questions right now, we'd be happy to answer them. I'll stop sharing my screen.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Mr. Bailey. That's a good reminder of the importance of ALR land and of growing our own food locally.
Awesome.
I have Director McMahon here with her hand up. Let's go to Director McMahon.
Absolutely. I'm going to suggest that you need to add a 7th key pressure, which is water. That's becoming more and more of a problem. It's certainly a critical problem here on the Sunshine Coast. I was also wondering if your material for what local governments can do differentiates between regional districts and municipalities, because we often run into that problem that we do not have the same authority that municipalities do. Have you any thoughts on that?
First off, the water one, yeah, we're abundantly aware of that. Conley and I actually met before this yesterday to talk about this, and I said, I bet you SCRD is going to bring up water. Everyone's bringing up water these days. Rightfully so, right? It's a huge problem, particularly in your area and on the Gulf Islands. Huge water pressure issues. I'll let Conley maybe speak to that a little bit more in a minute. Differences between, we haven't tailored this to acknowledge the differences between municipalities and regional districts, but that is a really good point. That's something to keep in mind next time we do this, because like you said, there are some differences, through the powers granted in the Local Government Act and whatnot. So good reminder. And Conley, are you there? Can you maybe just mention a little bit of what the ministry is doing regarding water? If that's possible.
Yeah. So for water, we have funding programs. They're not open currently, but likely will in the spring for water infrastructure. So if farmers want to improve their irrigation systems for more efficient irrigation or build water storage facilities, that sort of thing, we have funding. Cost shares up to 75%. That's our ag water infrastructure program. And some of those beneficial management practices are now part of the beneficial management practices program as well. These programs are through IAF, the Investment Agriculture Foundation. I can drop a link in the chat if you want to take a look at that. My understanding of water in the SCRD, obviously water availability is a big one. My understanding is most farms do not have groundwater wells. Many of them are on city water, which I've heard is a challenge before because of the cost associated with it. But also, drilling groundwater wells is also very costly, and we don't provide funding for groundwater wells, for drilling groundwater wells. On top of that, there's groundwater licensing that farmers need now. So a bit of a challenge there to, if before you build a groundwater well, you're going to want to be sure that you can get a license granted. So yeah, definitely recognize that there's some issues there, and I wonder from I don't know if now is the time to have this conversation, but I'd like to hear more about what you guys see as solutions to water restrictions in your area. And yeah, definitely open to having that conversation.
Would be a great conversation to have offline. If you could maybe share your contact in the chat or send us an email.
Definitely.
That would be really useful. We are trying to support the few farmers that we have. We don't have a whole lot of agriculture happening on the coast, but the ones that we have, we cherish them and we would like to keep them and encourage them as much as we can. So that would be fantastic. Director Bax.
Right.
Yeah, thank you. The issue of water, I find, is some of the roadblocks that are in place that I see if we can advocate together. I know that because of regulations around Vancouver Coastal Health, that if a farmer was to drill a well for irrigation, that he cannot share that water with his neighbor. And I think that's an impediment to farmers sharing the cost of groundwater. It's for the so that our agricultural land is we have a few farmers that are close together, and if they were to create a groundwater system for themselves for irrigation, they can't share the water between each other because of regulations behind Vancouver Coastal Health. And I was wondering if there's any way that we can advocate to help get through these roadblocks, maybe together.
Yeah, I mean, this is a different conversation talking about water and farm. I think we're going to try and stay on the topic of ALR land and protecting ALR land at the moment, but that's a conversation we definitely could be having. And I know Director McMahon is very interested in that as well. So we can take that offline just to not take too much time here. Director McMahon.
And I will be in touch about that. But the other fundamental roadblock that we have is provincial, which is that the Ministry of Agriculture does not differentiate between food growing and other agricultural activities. So it doesn't matter whether you're growing flowers or Christmas trees or horses or vegetables, it's all treated the same way. And if we are to address food security, we actually have to prioritize food growing. Is there any prospect of the province doing that?
Yeah, that's a great question, and we hear that quite often, and it's such a delicate and challenging one. I think if you were to say that to a lot of non-food farmers, their response would be, there's so much red tape already in the agricultural industry, and now you're dictating what we can grow. I think there'd be a lot of pushback on that. And the fact is, you have food security on one hand, and then you have economic development on the other, and these non-food crops generate huge economic revenues for this province. Flowers, for instance, are the second largest economic driver in the agricultural industry in this province, which is just astonishing. And then the other thing too is if you're not growing those things, flowers, Christmas trees, pumpkins, people still want them. So then we're just going to have to import them, right? So there is that, consideration as well. But your point is well taken, and it's something that a lot of people are looking at and maybe trying to explore right now. But I think from the province's standpoint, we don't want to get into the business of telling farmers what to grow at this time.
Right. Thank you very much. I don't see any other hands, but I do have a quick question. Like, just about the timing of this presentation? Are you doing the rounds of all the local governments, or has there been?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I won't delve into it too much. We wanted to start these actually after the municipal election, which feels like it was 10 years ago now. And there were some hiccups and some roadblocks, and we actually commenced. So we actually started these in the spring, which is again way past when the election was. But then we were told that the provincial election, we had to shut them down. So now we restarted them here in the winter. So this is, I think, my 8th or 9th one. I have one more to do, and then we're done. But the plan moving forward is to start doing something like this after a municipal election, like 2 or 3 months after, not a year, right? So. The timing is a little awkward. We recognize that, and it's something we're going to adjust after the next municipal election.
Great. Thank you so much for your presentation.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
We will be in touch.
Yeah, wonderful. Thanks so much. And
Awesome.
Yeah, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to everyone.
Happy holidays.
Okay,
Thank
thanks.
you. Happy holidays.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Wonderful. Okay, so that's it for the presentations today. Thank you to all the presenters. So we're moving on to reports. So report 4.1, Hotel Lake Park Memorandum of Understanding Renewal. And who do we have today? William and Huntington. Thank you. Whenever you're ready, if you could introduce that for us, that'd be great.
Great, thank you. Good morning. This staff report is to seek approval for the SCRD and the Pender Harbor Living Heritage Society to enter a renewed 5-year memorandum of understanding for the proposed trail and dock improvements for Hotel Lake Park. Staff recommend renewal of the MOU to demonstrate continued support of the dock and trail proposal. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. All right, so that seems pretty straightforward. The 10-year MOU is expiring at the end of the year, so we either let it expire or renew it for recommended 5 years. Director Lee.
Yes, I'm quite aware of this one. It's to build a community dock, and the paperwork and all the studies have been done, and we're simply waiting for the province to give us the go-ahead on it. So this is an important part to have this renewable done. So I'd like to make a motion to accept the recommendations on page 31.
Right, that's seconded by Director McMahon. Are there any further questions, discussion? If not, I will call the question. All in favor? And that passes. Thank you. That was easy. Excellent. Moving at record speed. So now on to 4.2, Development Permit Application DP 000369 for 1200 Stewart Road, Bonnybrook Industries. And we have Manager Jackson here to introduce. Good morning, Manager Jackson.
Good morning. We actually have Devin Rajala, Planning Technician 3 online to introduce the report. I'm here to help backstop
Hello.
questions.
Hi, good morning. Hear me
Good
fine?
morning.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to present a form and character development permit application to allow the construction of an auxiliary building on an industrial zone lot located on Stewart Road and West Howe Sound. Development Permit Area 8, Stewart Road Light Industrial, regulates the form and character of development, and all applications must be considered by the SCRD Board for approval conditions. The guidelines for DPA 8 apply to buildings, landscaping, and land alteration, and are divided into 3 sections: building form, landscape screening, and signage illumination. Staff recommend issuance of the development permit. Staff are happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Rajala. And thank you so much for the report. Very clear, concise. Thanks for the guidelines and analysis. Very helpful. Director Stanford.
Before I recommend the motion on the report, on page 35, I have a question. Is there any responsibility for making sure with the green screening and plantings that are proposed that there is no invasive species, and that there's some responsibility for maintaining invasive species in the area?
Great question. Mr. Rajala, do you have an answer to that question?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, there was a landscape plan that was submitted by the applicant, and it includes natural vegetation and trees.
Right. Yes, at the very end. But I guess is there any is this a requirement for landscaping to only work with non-invasive species, or is this at the discretion of the applicant?
Just
Manager Jackson?
hopping in further Devin's answer there. So we don't have any specific guidelines that actually regulate exactly what type of species are planted. As part of the approved landscape plan, we do ensure that that is generally what is approved. Staff do not have an actual arborist on staff that can actually guarantee that we know every plant species that's planted and can be matched, but we do our level best to try and ensure compliance with the landscape plan that we approve. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Director Stanford.
follow-up. So I guess I'm asking that there is a plan. I understand that. Is there any follow-up in terms of helping to ensure the growth, the lack of invasive species? I'm thinking about broom, things like that tend to pop up when lands are being disturbed like this. So if there isn't a requirement for them to maintain that, I just would like the owners to consider the importance of keeping an eye on invasive species getting a hold in this area.
Yeah, fair enough. And I think that's good for all of us, right? Great. And so yes, Director Sanford.
So given that, I would like to move the motion on page 35 as recommended.
Excellent. Do I have a seconder? Director McMahon? Perfect. And did you have a question, Director McMahon?
Just a slight comment. I mean, I don't put a lot of sweat into beautifying industrial properties as a general thing, but I do note that because of the location on the bypass, every tourist who visits the Sunshine Coast goes past that area, so we care a little bit. Thank you.
That's a good point. All right, seeing no further hands, I will call the question. All in favor? And that carries. Beautiful. So that's the end of reports. Thank you, staff. We do have the minutes from the APC meetings of Electoral Area A, E, and F. So I think do we want to go one by one or just make comments, questions on any of them, if any? I don't see any hands. Always grateful to our volunteers on the APCs. Director McMahon.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if staff have any further information on proposed format of upcoming APC meetings, because I'm getting comments back from my APC with some various concerns about the hybrid format and how workable that's going to be. Just wondering if there's any updates. Thanks.
GM Hall, any comments?
Thank you, Chair. Just to say we are on the verge, possibly today, of sending out some questions to APC members as part of assessing the feasibility of various tweaks to how we roll a model out that serves us all. Thanks.
Follow up, Director McMahon.
Yeah, I was thinking that this coming year, although normally referrals are unpredictable, so we don't know when agendas are coming at the various APCs, but with an OCP process coming forward, then presumably there might be a more structured and predictable a series of consultations or reports or community engagement coming at us. So maybe it would be a little easier this year to sort of have a schedule. Just a thought.
Thank you for that comment. Excellent. So this takes us, well, I don't see any more hands. So I think thank you again to the volunteers. Great notes for us. So the last item here is communications. We do have a letter from Connect the Coast with a request, and we do have someone here from TRAC to maybe give us a bit more context. I've allowed 5 minutes because it's the holidays. And so, Mr. William, yes, your Christmas gift. So you can feel free to come forward to the mic. And if you have 5 minutes, if you'd like to give us a bit more context on this letter.
We give 10 minutes to people with Christmas hats.
That's right.
So it's live? Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Chair, for accommodating my request there. Really appreciate it. And I'll try and keep it on 5 minutes. I understand you recently circulated a letter that summarized what we're trying to do here. And we're just so excited about what progress we've made. We want to make sure everybody's aware of what we're doing. So as a very brief recap, I'm here on behalf of Connect the Coast Society, which is an offshoot of TRAC. We're working towards building a multi-use path between Seashelt and Langdale. We're a registered charity solely focused on the MUP. Our board is made up of myself, Alan Williams, Sandra Phillips, who's the CEO of Modo, Scott Nelson, a technologist, Stephen Forgas, the chair of TRAC and a communication specialist, and Tanis Braithwaite, a retired lawyer. I just bring that up to say that we have a great team, and we think we can keep pushing this forward. Why are we doing this? The reasons you know: safety, health, our residents and visitors, transportation equity, highway and ferry capacity, tourism, economic growth, climate change. And what we're trying to do is build an all ages and abilities infrastructure like the Tofino MUP along our highway. So how are we doing this? We started with a preliminary design that was completed in 2022 that identified priority segments. And last year, we were awarded a GMF grant so we can move forward with that. That would not have been possible without local partners and supporters. The town of Gibsons was the lead applicant, municipal applicant in the grant, and the SERD contributed $35,000. So with this grant, that is equal to $70,000. We also had many, many letters of support from Vancouver Coastal Health, Patrick Whaler, SD46, Rotary. The list goes on, and we included them in the initial request to you. So with that in place, excuse me, we've started working on the priority segment that is between Gibsons and Lower Road, and we're making great progress. And so the basic process for a project like this is to do the preliminary design, which we've completed. Then you move to conceptual design, then you move to detailed design, and finally you move, hopefully, to construction. And so the work has begun. We've hired an engineering firm, WSP, to manage the project. Ecologics has completed our environmental overview assessment. Campfire Archaeology has initiated the process for an overview assessment. Genovera has started collecting LiDAR data. WSP has started the stakeholder engagement meetings and will begin conceptual design when as the summer progresses. So we're now starting to look at initiating planning for a secondary priority segment between Roberts Creek Provincial Park and the entrance to Field Road. And with that in place, you could get from Gibsons to Wilson Creek without riding on the highway, which would be quite amazing. So the last thing is the request, which is part of the letter. We're seeking input and support from you on budgetary process related to $35,000 to help us move forward. And these would be used in upcoming match grant applications. And due to the budget process, it's if we don't get in early enough, it just means another cycle of budget and grant applications that we wouldn't be able to apply for. And we're also asking that the SERD allocate staff time towards supporting this initiative. Thank you very much.
Well, with time to spare, wonderful. Thank you very much. Yes, great project. I think every time I see a presentation, every time TRAC presents this project, I see a lot of enthusiasm in the community. So thank you for all the work that you do. I think it's a matter of managing priorities at this point. Director McMahon?
Yeah, I'd like to express my support. The most recent pedestrian fatality on that stretch of road that you've identified as a high priority is just demonstrates the problem. And if we wait for the Ministry of Transportation to solve the problem, we may all either die of old age or die of being run down on the road. So we have to do whatever we can to move this forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Director McMahon. Director Bax.
I too would like to express my support for this initiative and also that to bring to the public my advocacy to the Ministry of Transport and Infrastructure to reduce the speed limit on this stretch of highway that you're talking about. So, and in order to create a crosswalk, a lighted signaled crosswalk in the area where this latest fatality occurred, we need to have MOTI reduce the speed limit at that place because they won't put a crosswalk on a 80-kilometer-an-hour highway.
Right, so good advocacy for us to do. So we do have a request in the letter, which is to have a $35,000 budget proposal in this budget cycle. Budget, start the budgetary process with it. So it would be for 2025. Do I understand this correctly? Or 20, for this one, right. So it would have to go into round 2. And also allocating 10 hours of staff time. So I'm wondering if I'm being stared at. I'm feeling the heat there. So I don't think we're going to make a motion on the fly here. So that's something that we can. I don't know how directors want to. Director Bax?
I recommend that we take this offline and we discuss it with staff and try to figure out how we can bring this into round 2 budget.
Okay. So, right. Perfect. Thank you so much. That was very nice of you to come and talk to us today.
Thank you very much.
And I forgot to ask for a motion to receive all reports. And that's moved, seconded. Thank you. All in favor? All reports have been received. All right, phew, that's done. Okay, thank you very much. All right. Yes, we're going to take a 5-minute, right, we're going to go in camera, but is there anyone in the gallery that would like to ask a question? If so, raise your hand. I don't see, do I see hands? Nope. Okay. All right. Yes. Okay, so need a motion to that the public be excluded from attendance at the meeting in accordance with section 91A and E of the community charter. Can I get a motion? That's moved Director McMahon, seconded Director Lee. All in favor? And I also need a motion to allow Director Toth to attend the in-camera meet. Yeah, move seconded. Excellent. All in favor? Okay, he can stay. Excellent. So we'll be moving in camera. Thank you very much. Welcome back to our loyal viewers. We're at the end of the December 19th Electoral Area Services meeting. It is the last one of the year. I would like to take this opportunity to wish happy holidays to everybody, especially to our staff who's worked really hard this year. Thank you for all the work and looking forward to seeing you again in 2025. And of course, happy holidays to all Sunshine Coast residents. May they be merry and safe. All right. Let's adjourn this meeting. Motion to adjourn. All right, all in favor? Happy holidays.